Okay, let's talk about some effective strategies for interviewing. We have this person in mind, like this is the best person. I really want to talk to this person about that story because I know they know. Well, reach for that person, that's important. But you also need to have a backup. So, well, this other person. So, I want the head of the Planning and Zoning Commission, or I really want this person, this president of the Association of Planners. I really want that person, but I will take this other person because they know. And then if that person isn't available, okay, well, this one. And, I eventually get down to it's deadline, man, I need to talk to somebody. What is not okay is some random person's opinion about something, right? So you don't just walk out onto the quad, the virtual quad, as it were, and just ask some person a question. What do you think about this? We really need good, credible sources who have knowledge specific to our topic, right? Specific to our topic. So let's look at what that might look like with respect to one source. So let's say you want to get the American Association of Planners. Again, there is an association. They have a national office in DC. They've got a big office in Chicago. One thing that an effective strategy for getting somebody from government, from an association, from a business, go to their website, look for the media relations or communications tab, and reach out to that person. Sometimes it says media relations. That's fine. Approach them, send them an email, call them, and say, "I'm a student journalist. I'm working on a project. I'd like to talk to somebody about this." So you might reach out to the national office. You might decide, I'd like to talk to the Texas office. I suggest you try both those things, right? And that if you're not hearing back from them quickly, then you try the Association of Collegiate Schools of Planning, right? So these are universities that train people to be planners. And the people who are teaching those people to be planners are generally people who research urban planning. So a professor with expertise works. And you may get down to that sort of towards that other side, right? Where I said, like, okay, this is what we got to do on deadline. Maybe it's just a spokesperson for an advocacy group who can, maybe it's just a spokesperson for an advocacy group who can give us some perspective. Sometimes we do what we got to do. It still needs to be somebody who's got particular knowledge and can help bring credibility to your story. Let's take a look at a story. This is from the University Star about student complexes in San Marcos and the housing market. So the sources, she uses two sources in this story. I'd like three, but you will see in a moment how she ended up using a report to sort of represent the third. Kathy McCarthy is in the lead. She's the face of the story. This can be an effective way to write a story, make us care about somebody. She actually represents the planning and zoning. She's a planning and zoning member. Also, she is affected by this issue, right? So she talks about how her daughter lives with her because they can't find another place for her to live. And then she also has Elizabeth Ehlers, who is the San Marcos permitting director. So she sort of keeps track of all of the permits for new building in San Marcos. Then we have non-interview sources. Now you need 3 minimum, again, might be many more, sources that you interview, but you will likely have other sources in your story. And in this case, there's a HUD report, Housing and Urban Development Report on College Housing. There's the San Marcos Development Code that she makes reference to. There are news articles. In general, we wouldn't use other news articles, but you'll see how in this case it is effective and acceptable. And then also a company profile. So let's take a look. This part of the story farther down talks about how American Campus Communities, the CEO, Bill Bayless, sort of created this concept of rent by the bed. And so the reporter really wanted to talk to him or somebody from American Campus Communities, but instead ended up using information from other news sources and also from the company's annual report, right? So here it refers to a Bloomberg article about American Campus Communities. Again, normally we wouldn't refer to another media article, but Bloomberg is a highly respected business news organization, right? So that makes sense. And it links back to the article. And then also refers to the company's profile, right? So according to their company profile, you don't have to say according to their website. You can say according to their profile, and you can link to it if you choose to. And then she also refers to their annual report, which may be on their website, could be with the SEC. But in this case, it says Bayless, who is the CEO, Bill Bayless, says wrote the vision of the company, and then there's a quote, right? So we know that normally if there's a quote, that means you interviewed that person. So if I see quote marks, I immediately think you interviewed this person. If you did not interview this person, then you need to let the reader know. So in this case, up here it says in a statement from the annual report, here's more quote, but again, be specific about where this came from. If you just said Bayless said, I'm going to say, oh, you talked to Bayless. But in this case, it says Bayless wrote in the statement. We need to help readers understand because I put this in a different place than if you interviewed Bayless. If Bayless had to answer questions from a reporter, that's different, right? This is scripted. This was something he could say in a report that he expected to give the public. Still can be interesting information, but I'd rather have an interview. If I can't get it, I have this. And then an added important element here is that because this reporter wanted to talk to somebody from that company and could not get someone, she says several phone call attempts were made to reach them. There was no response. An email was sent. There was no response. The manager of this complex couldn't meet. So let the reader know you tried to get this. It's important to the story. We ended up with this bit of information. We would have rather had an interview. That's the way we do it. So let's take a look, just a quick look at this visualization, and we'll talk more about that in another mini lecture. But in this case, this looks familiar, right? This is Tableau. So her headline, number of housing units added to San Marcos 2005 to 2018, lets you know what's in this visualization. Student housing sees consistent increase over non-student and university housing. So it helps you understand this is what I'm looking at. So we have a color key at the bottom. You know that this is student housing. And she even points out some specifics, right? Like here's a peak. This is when Cabana Beach and Bellagio was built. Here's a negative number. Unusual, we don't always do this, right? Because it's like, why would we go below zero? But in this case, it tells you Texas State demolishes Falls Hall and closes San Saba. So this is a fairly easy to understand graphic. And we have the caption graphic showing the number of units. Here it says data is provided by the city of San Marcos. I would actually prefer this say, be over to the side and say source, city of San Marcos data. So that's kind of what's missing for me. I like it to be separately as a source, but it's still here. And then this is the person who created it, right? So Sandra created it. This is what a good visualization looks like. Okay, up next, finding sources.